Today, you are going to get a front row seat to the memorable Springbok career of Louis Koen. Louis, welcome to Front Row Rugby.
Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Now, Louis, just before we begin our conversation, let's take a look at today's trivia question. Which brand became the official Springbok kit supplier in 2014? Now, if you know the answer to the question, you can put it in the comment section down below, and we'll also find out if Louis knows the answer, but we'll do that at the end of our conversation. Louis, I would like to begin in 2000. Talk to me about how you were feeling ahead of your Springbok Test debut against Australia in Melbourne.
Yo, Peter, it's a long time ago, so I hope I can look back at the detail and remember. I think what comes to mind first and foremost was that I was injured in the build up to that test match. We had a camp in Plettenberg Bay preparing for I think it was test matches against England that was played in, forgive me, I think Bloemfontein, and then in the build up I got injured. I actually ran with my head into Rassie Erasmus's hip, and I was sent down to Cape Town to go into a MRI scanner, and they realized my disc popped between my C5 and C6 vertebra. So I was in a neck brace, and I was told by the specialist, look, you're not going to play rugby for the foreseeable future. You're not allowed to fly. You're going to lie in bed for 3 weeks with a neck brace. So I didn't participate in the England test matches. I think we also played Italy, I think so, and then we left for the Tri Nations to Australia. And I think Bram van Staten got injured in the test match just before that test match. So I was still in bed at home in Cape Town with a neck brace on when Nick Mallett phoned me. And I think I think my mom burst out in tears when I told her this. I want to play, but my dad said, let's go. Maybe the chance never comes your way again. And I flew the Monday. I think I arrived in Australia the Tuesday. I think I had one training session on the Wednesday with the team because Thursday was the day off, and then we had captain. So that was the build up towards my first test match. And that specific Australian team won, were 99 World Cup winners, I think. I think they were a very strong team. Larkham, Finnegan, George Gregan, so it was a fantastic team. So I was really nervous, but also obviously as a young boy, you dream of these moments, So just immensely grateful and thankful for the opportunity. Although I knew the build up to the test match wasn't great in prep wise, but what a magnificent moment. I think you can never explain to anybody what that feels like, to look at that jersey the night before. I remember they handed us the jerseys on the Friday night before the test match, and looking at that jersey on my bed, it's just a real feeling because you got to pinch yourself. How did you end up here? How did it happen? And I think it's an immense feeling of gratitude towards a lot of people.
Very special memories, Louis. We were actually ahead in that test match at half-time, but then unfortunately we didn't score any points in the second half, and the Aussies ended up beating us. How disappointing was that?
Yeah, I thought we had a good, I think I remember we had a good first half, and then we were actually still in the match with about, forgive me, I don't know, I can't remember the detail, but I think it was the last 15 minutes that they sort of got on top of us. So, yeah, obviously disappointed afterwards. You play for your country, and there's high expectations. You get this one opportunity to be part of something special, and you always want to win. That's a fact. But I think afterwards, reflecting after the game, speaking to my dad afterwards, he said to me, listen, focus on being there and experiencing everything that you can take in. Being initiated that evening was a very interesting and very memorable experience, and to be in that environment. What's the Springboks all about? That was the memories I take away from it, and the learnings that I got from that game was immense.
Hey, if you're enjoying this video, why not consider becoming a patron? It's my dream, guys, to do this full time, and with a small financial contribution, you can help me realize that dream. The link and the QR code is appearing on your screen right now, and I'll also put it down in the description area for you to go and click on at a later stage if you would like to do so. And by becoming a patron, I promise there will be great benefits for members. Now let's get back to the interview. So you only had the one test match under Nick Mallett, as it turns out. What can you tell us about him as a coach, the way you experienced him?
Yeah, I think Nick had his way of doing things, and you know, he obviously is a guy that you know, he believes in the way he wants to play, and he's got also a specific let's say a specific type of player that he's looking for in his game plan. So I don't think I really fitted the mold that he was looking for. But you know, always grateful to him for granting me the opportunity. You know, if as a coach, you would always, you know, if you want to see what the guy can do, you know, you got to give him a chance. And I think grateful for him for giving me that opportunity. But I think after that test match, I think he realized I wasn't the guy that he would like to go with. And I think a player like a Bram van Straten, a Henry Honeyball, a Butch James was more the type of player that he was looking for at 10.
And then as it turns out, Louis, you were out of the picture for about 18 months. You only came back into the Springbok setup at the end of 2001 on the end of year tour under Harry Viljoen. While I was doing research for this interview, I noticed that in the first couple of test matches, Bram van Straten was actually doing the goal kicking, which to me was actually quite interesting because you were well known and perhaps most famous for your goal kicking accuracy. Was that something that bothered you?
No, not really. I think you know, you come into an environment and you're given a role, and you know, the goal kicking is just a part of a role that you have. You know, in that role, if that's not part of your responsibilities for a specific game, you try and focus on the things that are given to you. You know, and you try and be a team player and contribute in the roles that are given to you. So I think Bram was a fantastic goal kicker. So I was absolutely happy and agreed with that in terms of let him take what he's really good at, and I can try and focus on things that I wanted to improve on and contribute to the team. You know, so it was not a problem at all.
And talk to me about what it was like going to Houston in the United States for that one-off test match.
You're incredible. I think not many of us have ever been to America before, you know, and I think that's the beauty of rugby, you know, and being part of a national team. And nowadays, obviously, the guys are seeing the more of Europe, where in our days we were more involved in Super Rugby. So our reference was Australia, New Zealand, you know, and then you play Tri-Nations, and you are again back to New Zealand, back to Australia. So the privilege of going on an end of year tour into Europe, and then this wonderful opportunity to experience America. And we went into Houston, and you could take your wife with as well, or your girlfriend. You obviously had to pay for her. So that was fantastic, because a lot of the players' wives joined us in I think in London. We played England, I think so, and then we went over to America. So it was more of a family affair than anything else. And what was really amazing about that match was, you know, in those days, rugby was just an afterthought in America, you know. But the amount of people that pitched up for that test match was phenomenal. And you would think that, yeah, America, they're not really ranked high, and this won't be a problem for a team like South Africa. But I remember the first 30 minutes of that test match was a proper challenge and a proper test match. And they had a couple of South African boys playing in their team. And, you know, it was just that what stood out for me was the physicality of the South African boys in the American team that we were confronted with. And yeah, I remember the crowd. I remember the crowd. I can't really remember where we played, forgive me, but I remember it was a tough game, and we could only sort of get on top of them, you know, late first half, and then in the second half we were fortunate to play well. So yeah, great memories. And something, Peter, that stands out for me as well, there was a lot of South African people that obviously are living in Houston at that particular point in time. So you can imagine now the Springboks being there, how we were blessed and treated as you know, even the golf was on the house because an ex-South African guy arranged for us to play on this magnificent golf course on our off day. So those are the memories I have, you know, or that special times that you were blessed to be involved there and you know, meeting new people. And yeah, it was just a phenomenal experience.
Very cool indeed. So, Louis, as mentioned, it took about 18 months in between your test debut and that end of year tour. And then it was roughly another year and a half before you were back in the Springbok setup. What actually happened there?
No, Peter, I think your career as a professional rugby player, you know, when I got back from my first test match, you know, a guy like Laurie Mains was our coach at the Lions and at the Cats in Super Rugby. And you know, after the test match, he phoned me and I think it was made known that I'm being sent back to South Africa. But he phoned me and he said to me, you know, he thought I really did really well. He's very proud of me. He's looking forward for me to come back to the team because I have to contribute now, blah, blah, blah. So it's great when you are in that position to have somebody back home that really believes in you, you know, in those times. And then you put your head down, you know, you put your head down and you work hard, you know. And I think one must never think of becoming a Springbok and being with the Springboks is a given, you know. If it was easy to be a Springbok, everybody would be a Springbok, you know. So it's not just something that you take for granted. It takes a hell of a lot of hard work. And even if you get one opportunity, you know, it's a special opportunity. So even if I only had one opportunity, I would have been grateful beyond measure for that opportunity, because to experience that, the build up, the lead up, receiving your jersey, receiving your blazer, receiving your cap, just stuff that kids dream about, you know, that boys dream about when we grow up. So really special.
A privilege indeed. So, Louis, let me ask you about Harry Viljoen, because earlier I asked you to tell us a little bit about Nick. What can you tell us about Harry?
Harry came into Western Province. He came from the Sharks, I think, or the Lions, and he brought guys down to Cape Town like Dick Meyer, James Small. We were young, you know, myself and Bob Skinstad and Koen. We just came out of the under-20 squad, Percy Montgomery, and so he brought Christian Stewart back from Australia. So what Harry really did well was when he came in, he had a plan. You know, he had a plan to merge some experience with a couple of young guys. And what I really appreciated from him was his business. He brought a business type of environment because he was a very successful businessman at that stage. He brought a more of a, I don't really know how to say, but a business approach to how we do things. You know, in the past, because we just sort of in 95, I think professional rugby started. We were still transitioning into what it means to be a professional, you know. But I remember the first team meeting we had under Harry. It was a boardroom style setup, and there was every guy received a diary with your name on, and with the whole season plan inside the diary, a code of conduct. You know, our values and stuff like that, you know, team slogans, team mottos, a game model explained, a philosophy of how we wanted to play, where in the past, when you would arrive, it was meeting in the change room, you know, getting dressed for practice. Where the first time we had a session with him was in a boardroom style meeting, and he was mapping out the season, you know, and explain to us exactly how we're going to win the Currie Cup at the end of the year. So I was really fascinated by his approach. And what I remember from Harry was that I felt that he installed confidence in me. You know, he really backed me beyond measure. Even if I made mistakes, he was always encouraging me to have a go. You know, try things, don't worry. And one thing I must mention to you, Peter, that was phenomenal with him. We started, I think, in October of 1996 with our pre-season training under Harry, and he explained to us in that first meeting that we're going to play a continuity game. And to play that, we're going to do what he called 10 channel drills. And it's fall and pop, offloading the tackle, gut pass, all those things that you know, I think it comes from Australia. I can't remember, but when we started, we all thought, okay, like maybe this is a phase, or maybe this is something that he just wants to. But I promise you, we started in October 96, and the week before the final in 97, in October 1997, we were still doing the same 10 channel drills, as part of our weekly training sessions. And I think the way we played that year is testimony to what he had in mind, and it takes a special coach to transfer what you have in mind onto the field, and get your players to buy in. And obviously he was very clever to select a team that can play that type of rugby. Bob Skinstad was just Robbie Fleck, Percy, Brayton Paulser, those type of players were just exceptional in playing this continuity type of rugby. For me, I think he just changed the whole he changed the whole environment. I think he was sort of the guy that broke the ground for a more professional approach towards rugby. That's my experience. So really enjoyed him.
So Louis, in 2003, you're back in the picture. Rudolf Strowley is now the Springbok coach, and we started the season with 2 tests against Scotland. We won both of those, and then we were in Port Elizabeth to take on Argentina, and it was a really tough test match, and you had to step up and take a penalty right at the end in order to win it for us. Talk to me about the sort of pressure and the intensity of that moment and what's going through your mind.
Peter, I think when you grow up as a goal kicker, you start to develop a process, and or a routine. I think that's a better description of and obviously it evolves as you become older and you go through schoolboy stuff, and there's a new tee on the market and you try that out. And we started off with sand. When I was in school, we had sand, and then the kicking tee came in, and I was blessed to have been coached when I played for Province under Harry by a guy named Tiki de Jager. He was a teacher at Ronnebosch High School. He was a mathematician, a maths teacher. And when I was a schoolboy, my coach at school took me to Tiki for some sessions. And he just had a phenomenal way of explaining to me the different angles of approach, where your foot must plant, at what angle, blah, 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 blah. So I think the work that he did with me when I was a young boy just gave me the confidence to believe in what I was doing. And obviously, I was, for me, it was a simple formula, put the work in and then follow the process, or stick to your routine. So I worked really hard at it. And so at that given point in time, when the kick happened, I wasn't really nervous. If I think back at it, if I look at footage of it, it was just, for me, it's always been, I've done this 1,000 times, so I follow the same process. I put my tee down in a specific way. I place the ball on the tee on a specific way. I take 4 steps back. I look at something way behind the poles. I look at a spot on the ball where I want to strike the ball, and so, I hope I explain it correctly. It's not that I want to sound arrogant at all. I think the team must get a lot of credit for getting us into that position. But for me, it was more a thing of, I'm on a training pitch somewhere in Cape Town or in Durban, or it doesn't matter where I am, I'm following the same process that I did yesterday in my training session, so, and sometimes it works, and then sometimes you do follow the same process and it goes left or right. So, and I think that's the challenge to figure it out and be prepared. I think in these days, when you look at goal kickers, wow, I think it's incredible to watch the players now. You are seeing international guys, how accurate they are. It's been, in our days, when you were 85%, you were like from another planet. In today's kickers, it's weird if you're not at 85%, so it's strange how it really evolved now. So it's wonderful.
It's interesting, Louis, because I've had Andre Pretorius on the show, and you may remember that he kicked a last-minute kick against the All Blacks in 2006 to win a test for us. And I asked him a similar question, and he just said that he was so tired at the end of that match that he didn't even have time to think about the consequences and all of that stuff. But speaking of the All Blacks, Louis, we soon came up against them in the Tri-Nations. And we suffered a hiding against them at Loftus, 52-16. How much of a low moment was that?
Yeah, I think that specific group team that year, we I don't think we were ever fortunate to have consistency or continuity as a group. I remember, Peter, that I played that year. I played 12 test matches that year, and not for one test match or not for 2 consecutive test matches in a row I had the same scrum half or the same inside center. So we weren't fortunate to have 4 years together where we could build as a group and stuff. So we were very inconsistent. I mean, we were very inconsistent in the test match. A week before that All Black test, we beat Australia in Cape Town, and I thought it was one of our best test matches that we've played in that year. So you just starting to think, okay, wow, all the stuff that we've been working on now, it's, after the Australia one, you think, okay, the team is now sort of finding its straps, and then you go on to Loftus, and we started well, but then it just feels like it's weird. You don't really know what's happening. It's an out of body experience. You're looking at it from the top, and you think, how did this happen? And it was really hurtful and deflating, for the hope that we had after Australia, for them to beat us so easily and so convincingly, was just a sort of a kick in the teeth, because it just takes your confidence away, if you're honest. Just as a group, you just gave 3 steps forward in your confidence, and then you go 10 steps back, after a loss like that. And we did not need that for going into a World Cup, especially because it was a World Cup year. Yeah, I think it really hurt us confidence-wise. So not a great experience at all.
Speaking of that Australia test, that was actually on my birthday that year. So thank you very much to you and the rest of the guys for the birthday present. Louis, after that Tri-Nations and before the World Cup, and you know what I'm going to ask you, the guys had to go on this boot camp called Kamp Staaldraad. I've had many Springboks from that time on this show, and they've all told me their stories from Kamp Staaldraad. So I'm going to ask you to tell us your story.
I don't have a particularly negative connotation to it, Peter. I don't have a negative experience of it. Obviously, not one of us knew that it's going to happen. We were loaded onto a truck in the middle of the night, and then we were dumped somewhere, and we walked straight through the night. We were walking with these big tires and poles and stuff like that. So obviously you are taken out of your comfort zone, and once you get into it, you start realizing, okay, you understand what this is all about. It's going to be a bit of a mind battle. And the purpose of this thing is for us as a group to stand together and fight through this next 3 nights and come out the other end stronger, more united. But you don't know what's ahead. I think the one thing that caught me the most was our time in the water when we were in the dam, and it was I think we were in there for many hours. I can't remember how many, but a lot of hours. And I can survive. I can take any physical exercise. I can bite fast and I can draw a lot of energy from guys around me. When they put you through a physical challenge, there were many of those, and we could sort of battle through that. But cold. I think that was the only time that it got to me a little bit mentally. And because there's nobody else that can take you through this, because everybody else is suffering. And we were actually holding on to each other, grown men, were holding on to each other in this dam, because you were only allowed to put your nose out the water, and it was immensely cold. I just remember the coldness, and that was the one thing that I remember mentally got to me. But the rest of it, I thought, I understand what we want to do here. I understand the purpose. I'm gonna bite fuss. I'm gonna work my way through this, because I understood that if we come through this as a group, we're going to be stronger at the end of it. But unfortunately, I think Rudolf, in his head, he wanted us to get out of that whole thing as a tighter group. But especially in the water, some of the boys in the water, after many hours in the water, said, guys, if we walk out of the water together, what are they going to do? And then we decided as a group, we're going to walk out the water together, but only half of the group went out and half of the group stayed. And that's the moment I realized we're not a tight group, and that always stuck in the back of my head, that we were a little bit divided in that exercise, specifically the water exercise. But yeah, there were obviously some players that it didn't sit well with them. There was a couple of things that I thought, was this necessary, But all in all, Peter, I understood what it's about. I wanted to take the challenge and battle through it. But at the end of the day, I think it sort of divided us a little bit more than it was supposed to bind us together. And there was a couple of other stuff that happened through it all. And so yeah, I just thought, my last thought on it was, and I don't want to criticize any coaches because I'm a coach myself, but I think I lost about 5 kgs over the 4 days. That I think we only ate a boiled egg and a drumstick in 4 days, and it was quite a short time before World Cup. So to put your body physically through a challenge like that and losing 5 Ks before World Cup and breaking your body down like that, I thought, if we did this 3 months ago, yes, it would have made sense. But a couple of weeks before we're going to World Cup, I thought, sure, it's going to be tough to recover. And hence, unfortunately, it didn't work out for us. If we won that World Cup, I think everybody now in the world are still doing Kamp Staaldraad, because that would have been the secret recipe. But unfortunately, it didn't work out like that.
No, for sure. And then at that World Cup, Louis, we started off nicely with a big win over Uruguay. And then the next match, we came up against England. And I know that you yourself had a personal, almost tragedy on the eve of that match. How difficult was it for you to play in that test match in Perth?
Yeah, Peter, you don't want to make excuses, but, being more mature now and being more with more life experience, you understand, and being a coach myself, you understand players are just human. And, subconsciously, if you go through trauma on the eve of a match or the morning of a match, you can try and block it out as much as you can, as much as you want, but subconsciously, it does sit with you, and it does make you anxious and probably does influence your performance. Yeah, so obviously my wife was back home. She was 7 months pregnant. She got hijacked in Pretoria, stabbed with a knife, and there was 3:00 in the morning on the Saturday of the England Test match. So I got a phone call in my room, of my wife screaming and shouting, and then a friend took the phone and said to me, Louis, there's been an incident. We're going to rush her to hospital. She's a bit worried about the baby, obviously. And I didn't hear again from him until 11 o'clock. So I was awake from 3 in the morning until 11 o'clock when I got a call that, she's in hospital now, and they're doing tests, and they're still worried because there's no heartbeat that they can pick up. And so I went to Rolf at that stage and I said, listen, this is what happened. But you're in this situation where you're at a World Cup and you are playing for your country and you've done all this prep, and am I going to let the team down now if I tell Rolf now, listen, shit, I can't play because stuff at home is a bit messed up. am I dropping the team? I don't want to do that. But in the same breath, am I dropping my family? I don't want to do that. So you're sort of in a difficult spot, and ultimately, I decided to play, and if it was the right decision, I don't know. If it was the wrong decision, I don't know. Hindsight is the perfect science. But yeah, just unfortunate, and I think not a lacquer thing to go through before such an important test match,
They're quite horrible, actually, Louis. But then perhaps a funnier moment against Samoa, a good win for the Springboks. And I think you know what I'm going to ask you. You're about to take, I think it was a conversion, and there was this crazy fan that ran onto the field. Just explain to us what actually happened there.
No, I was taking a kick, Peter, and I was really fortunate that when you strike the ball, if you can visualize striking a rugby ball as a goal kicker, you're more in a bend over position, where your head is forward and your leg is coming up. So you're actually in a quite strong position. So when I struck the ball, I just felt somebody or something hit me on this hip bone of mine, and when I looked back, the guy was passed out. So he ran with his head flat out into my back, into my hip bone here. And I think if I was standing still upright, when you look at the poles and you're still addressing the kick before you start your run up, if he hit me there, it could have been really, another outcome. But I was blessed that I was in a strong position when he hit me. So I turned around and I was thinking, what the hell happened now? But he was completely knocked out. So, I mean, even I think a couple of the boys ran over, Victor and them ran over, and I probably wanted to assault the guy, but he was lights out. He was completely knocked out. And I think he had a couple of beers too many. But yeah, those things happen, It was it was quite a funny moment. And a lot of times, a lot of people still send me YouTube clips every now and then asking me what the hell happened here. So yeah, it was just one of those things that I'll also never forget. These things they happen to you, and yeah, not winning a World Cup, but taking all the other things that happened to you along the way. And you got to see the lighter side in things as well, Peter. You got to life is not just about winning trophies. It's about the lighter side of things and the experience and being aware and being into it fully. And I will remember those things forever.
Weird and wonderful stuff. So I've got to ask you, Louis, we spoke earlier about self-belief and confidence going into that Rugby World Cup. Ahead of the quarterfinal against New Zealand, knowing that we had been beaten by them so badly earlier, would you say that, even though obviously the aim was to win that quarterfinal, but do you think that the boys truly believed that they could win that match?
Yeah, Peter, people always, ask the question, but I think there's never been a Springbok team ever that runs out onto a field that does not believe, that does not want to absolutely leave everything out there on the field and represent their families, their country, in a way where everybody can be proud of them. So no, I truly believe that the team that ran out that day was really had the belief and was really wanting to. Again, no excuses, but our up and down season and the inconsistency of the fact that we could not select the same team for 12 test matches in a row. I think as much as you want to, there is a thing like cohesion and combinations, hookers and locks, scrum halves and fly halves, centers, a center pairing, a back three that plays together regularly. So yeah, I think we had the belief, but also we lacked the cohesion. And you can play as individuals as well as you want to, but ultimately it's a 23-man game these days with a 7-1 bench that wins trophies. So I think we believed, but ultimately the lack of cohesion was not with us in that tournament.
Louis, your test career also ended there. How disappointed were you that you didn't get another chance under Jake White?
No, Peter, I won't say I was disappointed. Obviously, again, like I say, you don't take being selected for the box for granted, and you don't ever think that you are entitled to be selected again. after a World Cup like that, and after obviously not living up to the expectations, you come back, you take stock, and you got to put your head down and try again. You got to everybody again is now on the same playing field. There's new young players that's exciting, that steps into the fold, and it's a battle again. You got to battle again, and unfortunately, I wasn't selected ever again. But that's fine. I can live with it with that, with gratitude. I am absolutely grateful for every experience and every opportunity that I got. And I always say, it's funny that things work out the way they do. Jake, with that group, if you look at the consistency they had in 4 years, he took Skalk from year 1 all the way through to year 4. Fourie from year 1 all the way through to year 4. Bakkies, Victor. That group for 4 years stayed with Jake, and I think Jake sort of wrote a manual there for, if you want to be successful in a 4-year cycle, chopping and changing and experimenting with teams and combinations is not the way to go. Even if you lose a couple of test matches, but you stick with the same core group of players, your chance of being successful at the end of the day is much better than chopping and changing players all the way through, And I think that's what Jay got right. He stuck to his guns. He stuck to the core group of players that he believed in, and I think that was the reason why he was successful. So it's funny. I say to some of my friends, we had to show Jake how not to do it, so that Jake could get it right and win the World Cup for our country. So maybe I've contributed in some way to show him what not to do, so that they could be successful later on. I'm just grateful, Peter, absolutely grateful.
Love it. Louis, who was your toughest opponent?
Stephen Larkham by a long shot. Yeah, played against him on numerous times. When I played for the Stormers or the Cats, and the Bulls against the Brumbies, and also against for the Springboks as well. What I really appreciated from him, he was a lanky guy, a tall guy, in the mold of a Peter Rousseau. You look at him and you think, oh, but he can't be that fast. But you must judge him for his pace. But what he really was phenomenal at was to play flat on the gain line and still make a 10, 15 meter accurate spiral pass into a forward that runs a line into a gap. I just thought he was a phenomenal rugby player, with vision, with the ability to put people into space. He wasn't the greatest kicking fly off, but for the way he played was exactly how that Brumbies group of that era, played, with Joe Roth, Larkham. They had Mortlock, I think, was the centers, and Finnegan and those boys. They were the trendsetters of fast-paced rugby, on top of other teams. Getting on top of other teams and playing fast and flat. Where we came from the Nas Botha era as kids, we grew up watching Nas dominating teams with his tactical astuteness and tactical awareness, and the big packs of forwards that just scrums and mauls, and Nas would just tactically kill people. And they came with a fast, flat approach to rugby. That was just an expression that we weren't used to, and I loved to watch them play, and probably had a bit of an admiration for him while playing against him. So, but really tough opponent, really tough.
Very entertaining to watch them indeed. Louis, I'm not sure if you are able to answer this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway, and then you can tell me whether or not it's appropriate or not, given that you are currently coaching. But is there a player that is playing right now that you admire?
Sure, that's an interesting question. Because we're now more exposed to the European market, I would say, Peter, and we to be honest with you, when I grew up, I watched every single Super Rugby game that there was to watch. Now we don't really watch Super Rugby. I don't know if it's the same for you, but As a South African, I'm so entrenched in URC, and so I really admire at this stage the 9s and 10s. Sorry that I can't give you a specific play, but the 9s and 10s of the Irish teams. Leinster scrum off, and I think Munster's fly off Crowley. I just admire how they have managed to change the shape of Irish rugby into this game where they play a multi-phase attack type of game, again flat on top of you, and they create these beautiful timing of running off 9 or running off 10, and a 9 and a 10 that understands when to let the ball go, and how to create that spaces. That really is lovely for me to watch. So yeah, I think Crowley from Munster is really lovely to watch. If I must look at a South African player that really excites me, I would say I'm sorry, but I'm just a big Damian Willemse fan, and I'm probably a little bit biased because I coached him I was blessed to work with him when he was 19, 20. Just for me, what a rugby player. You can put him on wing, you can put him on probably scrum off as well, and he will just play his heart out for you. He will just, and his ability, his feet, his passing game, his kicking game, I think very close to, I would like to say, the complete player, if I can say that. So love to watch Damien play, big fan.
Is there a particularly funny moment that you can share with us from your time with the Springboks?
Probably not with my time with the Springboks, but my time with Western Province. We played the Lions at Newlands, and Kobus Visagie, who I played with at Marties at Stellenbosch University, made his debut and as a tight head prop. So he was 21, 22, Kobus, and he was scrumming that day against Bali Swart, who has won a World Cup in 95. At that stage, he was an old head with a full book of tricks. And Kobus, just to say it, I hope Kobe will forgive me for this, but to say it nicely, Kobus had a tough day at the office on Newlands. And normally in those days, on Mondays, we would go back to our clubs, and province training would only start on Tuesday. So Mondays would be club day. And I remember when we got to the training field at Stellenbosch at Marties, there was like these wooden benches that we would always sit and put our boots on and get dressed and have a bit of a banter and laugh. So Kobus arrives at training, and he puts his bag down, and he takes out his boots, and he takes out a shifting spanner, and he takes out these new studs, but these long studs that he bought himself. So he unscrewed all the old studs that he had in his boot, and he took the first long one and he put it in, and he started to screw it back in, and he said, "I will never, ever slip again." So he took every single long stud, and out loud in front of everybody said, "I will never, ever slip again." So we just bursted out laughing because we all knew what happened on Saturday, and it was not because he had short studs. But that was one of the funny moments that I cherish, because the banter amongst the boys, that's what rugby is all about, and the camaraderie. So that was a wonderful moment.
Wonderful stuff indeed. Louis, what are you up to these days?
Peter, I'm a high performance manager for SA Rugby, so I oversee all the junior programs from the age of we believe that from the age of 15 we can start sort of say that your talent identification process can start, because boys at the age of 12, 13, 14, they go through a lot of changes. A boy that's very big at the age of 13 compared to his peers might be the same size when he's 16, and all the other boys have outgrown him. You know how that works. So at the age of 15, 16, we start with our talent ID, and we follow a long process until they're 20. And my ultimate role is then to select 30 boys that will go to the Junior World Cup as under 20s. So we start at the age of 15. we start with a huge group of players, over 100 players that we follow from 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and we work that group down to 30 boys that ultimately represents us at the Junior World Cup. So my role is not to select them. My role is to facilitate the process and capacitate the system that can help the coaches and the boys and give them all the resources they need, to win a Junior World Cup for us. So that's my role. And recently I have been blessed to be the head coach of the women's team for the past 18 months. So really enjoyed that experience and love it. Really love to work with the ladies as well.
Sounds good to me. Louis, we're going to finish off by looking again at that trivia question. Which brand became the official Springbok kit supplier in 2014? Louis, do you know the answer?
Asics.
That is correct. And then obviously they were replaced by Nike, the current Springbok kit supplier. Louis, let me say that it was fantastic having you on Front Row Rugby today. A real pleasure to listen to those old stories and bringing back some fond memories as well. And I really hope that we can have you on again in the future.
Thanks, Peter. It's always a blessing for a fly-off to be on a Front Row show. So really appreciated the opportunity and all the best for you going forward as well.
Last time on Front Row Rugby, former Springbok fullback Ricardo Loubser was my guest. You can go and watch that video. It's appearing on your screen right now. Next time, Springbok coach Heineke Meyer will be my guest.